Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking on a truly fascinating challenge. We're going to use the hard, rigorous methods of modern neuroscience and biology to tackle one of history's absolute greatest philosophical mysteries. We're talking about the concept of the hidden God, or Deus absconditus. If you've ever found yourself wondering why a universal consciousness remains utterly invisible to us, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break this incredibly complex idea down using the physical mechanics of our very own brains. It's going to be a wild ride. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The hidden God paradox. 2. The limits of our tools. 3. The neuroscience of perception. 4. Integrative levels of organization. And finally, 5. The evolving God. By the end of this, we'll have bridged ancient religious texts directly with the firing rates of your neurons. Section 1. The hidden God paradox. The deep desire to see God and the sheer impossibility of actually doing so has completely puzzled humanity for millennia. It's basically a cornerstone of almost every major theology and philosophical tradition in the world. Just look at the book of Exodus. It literally states, "Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live." Biblical texts, alongside brilliant philosophers like Blaise Pascal, established this whole idea of the Deus absconditus, the hidden God. Throughout history, there's been this ancient, almost mystical fear that seeing God results in literal death. But what if that isn't just some poetic spiritual metaphor? What if death in this context is actually hinting at a very real, very hard biological absolute? And that brings us to our core problem. Can natural science actually explain why God is hidden? Instead of treating this as a purely theological or spiritual mystery, we're going to treat it as a hard biological boundary. We're going to look closely at the physical limitations of the human machine. Moving right along to Section 2, the limits of our tools. Think about it like this. In any science, our understanding of reality is strictly limited by the tools we use to measure it, right? If your thermometer only goes up to 100 degrees, you obviously can't use it to measure the temperature of a volcano. The exact same principle applies to our brains. To really grasp this, we need to understand a concept called Umwelt. This is a biological term that describes the selective perceptual world of an organism. It's determined by biological survival needs, not by objective reality. It is truly awe-inspiring when you realize that animals, and yes, us humans too, only perceive a tiny, fragmented slice of the universe. We don't see all electromagnetic waves. We don't hear all frequencies. We just perceive exactly enough to survive and reproduce. And because our physical perception is strictly limited by survival, so is our communication. Natural spoken language is, at its core, really just a primitive calculus. It's completely inadequate for describing complex physics, let alone higher realities or universal consciousness. This is exactly why philosophers so often hit a brick wall. Our everyday language, and honestly our foundational logic, evolved for hunting and gathering. It did not evolve for mapping out a cosmic, higher-level cognitive device. Section 3. The neuroscience of perception. We really need to stop thinking of the human brain as this limitless, magical entity and start viewing it as exactly what it is. It's just another biological measuring instrument, and it's one with very specific, hard physical constraints. In modern neuroscience, an action potential, which is the electrical pulse that literally makes up our thoughts, movements, and perceptions, has an uppermost firing limit of about 1,000 times per second. So our brain's sampling rate essentially operates in milliseconds. Just like a digital video camera has a specific frame rate, your brain literally has a biological frame rate. This places a hard physical constraint on what we can possibly perceive. If a cosmic reality operates on a vastly slower or vastly faster timescale than milliseconds, we are physically blind to it. No way around it. Let's zoom in even closer on the basic building block of our brain. A single neuron responds to chemical and electrical stimuli, and it's capable of rudimentary integration. It acts a bit like basic logic gates in a computer. But here is the most incredible, mind-blowing fact. A single neuron is totally, completely blind to the brain it lives inside. A neuron has absolutely no concept of you or the book you're reading right now. It has a rudimentary mind, a tiny little Umwelt, but it cannot fathom the higher-level consciousness it's actually helping to create. Section 4. Integrative levels of organization. Let's move up a bit and see how this all builds. These biological constraints stack up logically. Molecules and receptors combine to form neurons and cells, then trillions of those interactions create the whole brain and organism. Following this exact biological ladder, we can theorize the very next step, a higher-level cognitive device, which we might call God. Notice how each level exhibits emergent properties that are completely and utterly invisible to the level directly below it. So this drives home an absolutely crucial point, what we call the blindness of the micro. A component at a lower level simply cannot perceive or conceptualize the device at the next higher level. Just as a single nerve cell cannot comprehend the human, a human being is biologically incapable of comprehending the higher cognitive entity we call God. It's not a matter of lacking faith. Actually, scratch that, it's not about faith at all. It is a matter of strict structural biological limitation. God is hidden because our cognitive instrument is simply too small to measure him. Now, what's really fascinating here is that ancient philosophers intuited this way before we even knew what a neuron was. Take the 15th century thinker Nikoletseas. He noted, "He is not other than anything which can be." Thinkers like Cusanus and John Scotus Erugena, way back in the 9th century, intuitively predicted what modern molecular neuroscience is only now mapping out. They realized that God isn't some separate floating being somewhere out there, but rather the encompassing totality of these integrative levels. And finally, Section 5, the evolving God. The author of our source material uses these exact physical and biological principles to propose some truly unique operational definitions for this higher-level reality. Consider the traditional philosophical view for a second. God asioktos. This is a static, pure being, completely disconnected from the physical universe. Now contrast that with a biologically derived model, God sysioktos. This is a contingent, unfolding, evolving higher-level cognitive system. This is a scientifically grounded model of a cosmic mind that is actually growing and changing right alongside us. God sysioktos is defined as a vastly superior cognitive device that depends on a succedinium, which is just a fancy word for a sequence of less complex devices like humans to exist. And this brilliantly illustrates that God is not entirely disconnected or just floating in a void. Just as your mind relies entirely on your lower-level neurons to function, this higher-level consciousness relies on our lower-level cognitive systems to function and evolve. We are literally the building blocks. So what are the attributes of this scientifically derived God? Well, it possesses consciousness, intelligence, and will, but it operates at a vastly slower sampling rate than our rapid millisecond brain pulses. And because of this massive physiological mismatch, it remains a Deus absconditus, a hidden God to human perception. Most importantly, it evolves alongside the universe itself. Remember that ancient myth from the very beginning of our explainer, the one that says seeing God brings death? Under this biological model, it makes perfect logical sense. The only way a single neuron can see the brain is if it ceases to be a single neuron. The only way we could truly see God is by changing our biological form entirely. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to end on today. If God is still unfolding, what is your role as a cellular component in this cosmic brain? It completely reframes our entire existence, doesn't it? Your consciousness, your thoughts, your daily life. It might just be one small firing neuron in a massive evolving universe. It is a whole lot to process for sure, but it's a beautifully profound way to look at our place in the cosmos. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the limits of your own perception.